Hey everyone, Bife here. Before the video starts, this is a quick spoiler warning for those of you who are not yet in the place where they've watched the trailer. There are some things in here that you might well consider spoilers for the narrative of the final shape, and if you want to go in unspoiled, this is another point at which I'm going to give you that moment where you can jump off the train. Anyway, the video is going to continue as normal, spoiler warning is over, have fun. Greetings Guardians, my name is Bife here. So, a new trailer for the final shape was leaked last night, and Bungie decided to release the whole damn thing as is anyway on their public channels, so I don't consider this to be a leak in the sense that I wouldn't cover it. If Bungie has said that they are releasing it on their main things, well, heck, I'm gonna go ahead and cover it. So let's break this down and take a look at this trailer. I'm gonna pause in each of these different scenes and point out things that might be interesting or relevant, stuff that would generally warrant your attention. But first, a word from friends of the channel and sponsors of today's content, Advanced GG. You'll probably know them well by this point, especially if you're in the Destiny community, but there are some things you might not have heard about them. First of all, they're the only gaming supplement that's clinically proven to enhance your gaming performance. And as if that wasn't enough, it's a cut above its other competition in the market, with a formula that's not just got a great taste, but also has none of the chalkiness that some of the other supplements tend to have. It's also derived from a completely natural green tea caffeine for a consistent 4 to 5 hours of energy without crashes at the end. It's so good that I even used it back in my Crota Day 1 clear, so I'll be using it again when it comes to the final shape raid. The team is always reformulating flavors to improve them or come up with entirely new tastes. Even if you're not into any of the flavors right now, you can still grab some great merch of mine with Advanced GG. I know that a lot of you absolutely adored the ice shakers and desk mats that we were selling, so much so that they actually had to order more of them at a certain point in production. So yeah, keep an eye on that stuff. We will have more things to announce on that front very soon. Check my link down below or use code LAWDADDY with a capital L and capital D to get a discount at checkout. Thanks again to Advanced GG for sponsoring this video. Anyway, back to the lore. So, let's take a look at this very first scene here. This first scene has plant life growing out of what looks to be prismatic energy, given the color. This implies perhaps that this growth is arriving with the Guardian, or perhaps it's arriving as we attain transcendence. Maybe this means that in order to progress, there are certain areas where we must be transcendent in order for different parts of the environment to be highlighted. It's also hard to tell, but this structure of the foliage at the very center almost looks like a statue of someone. Don't know if that's the case, but it feels odd for it to be the first thing that is pointed out in the trailer.
When I woke up in this place, I could have almost believed it was paradise.
So right here we have a tree of silver wings, one that we've seen before in some previous promotional art and promotional trailers for the final shape, but we get a much better, clearer look at it here, and we get a look at what's going on with it. There is a creature twisted within its branches, and it's very clearly a hive, or perhaps a krill. We'd need to look at the other sides of this tree to understand if there are other creatures twisted in its branches, and maybe if there is some significance to that. Perhaps this represents each of the creatures that have been blessed with the light of the Traveler as a force that they can wield through ghosts, which would mean that the other three sides show humans, exos, and awoken. Maybe that is the case, maybe not. Maybe there is something more to the reason why the hive are represented on here. Either way, the tree is growing out of a similar cradle to the one we find on Io, which I think is also worth taking a look at because that is an area that we've only had a limited amount of time to explore, and it has a great degree of relevance to the light. Additionally, of course, there is the growing corruption here, and that is potentially something of significance. It could be representative of the machinations of the Witness, or something much deeper.
I feel the light flowing through me. It's everywhere. The ground beneath my feet is a memory.
These caverns are very much reminiscent of the European Dead Zone, but they particularly remind me of the caverns where we found Hawkmoon. This carries some significance for us and Crow. Remember that Crow has gotten here into the Pale Heart before us, so if the Pale Heart is being somewhat shaped by him, then, well, this might be a result of his presence. In addition, near this place we discovered a shard of the Traveler back on Earth, so potentially there is something of great relevance here as well. Maybe it is mirroring the memory of Crow. Maybe not.
So is the grass.
The great mechanism that the Guardians are running through here was the mechanism found in the northern section of the tower, which was destroyed in the onset of the Red War. But this used to be at the heart of the Speaker's chamber, and was used for, well, actually, we don't know what it was used for. It's also not the first time we've seen these flowers in the trailer, but I think it's worth pointing out now because they're just everywhere. I know, it seems odd to point out individual flowers, but hear me out. I think these are Asphodelia. I'd need to confirm it, but here's a further question. Why the hell does that matter? They're damn flowers. Well, actually it matters a lot, and that's because these flowers came from the Black Garden originally, but they were also found on precursor ships in their terraforming manifests. So maybe there is a tangible connection between the Pale Heart of the Traveler, the Black Garden, and the Precursor Society. I don't know what's going on, but somehow Asphodelia has landed in all three. Maybe that's as a result of us entering, as we saw in the very first frame. Foliage did just sort of appear out of nowhere, but if these have been here the whole time, it raises remarkable questions about who has been in here before us, or whether there was anyone capable of accessing this place prior.
And the sky. The warmth of the sun on my face. And around every corner, every familiar hallway.
The statues, sliced and halved here, seem to have incredibly large foreheads, which makes me wonder if these are actually representations of the Lubraeans trapped in a form of statue-like stasis. It's hard to tell from these angles, but it might be a little bit easier if you take a look at the subjugators. And it's also worth remembering that Rulk is covered in ornamentation, so he might be just a little bit taller. That being said, they might be similar, but we'd need to look at the structure of their hands and the structure of their legs in order to get a better idea. And that's predominantly because if these are representative, as we've seen with other statue work that has been created by the Witness, they tend to be, practically speaking, perfect in terms of proportions. They don't have extra fingers or missing limbs unless it is a deliberate slice down the middle. So we'd need to get a closer look, but if this is some indication of what's going on here, then maybe this is a nod to the fate of Lubrae.
I keep expecting to see you. But instead, corruption, a blight, sickness spreading through the Traveler.
Here we see something really, really fascinating. If you look at the body entombed within this glass, you'll see that it's most definitely not human given the size of the Guardians that are approaching it, but it's actually something even more terrifying. It's long and quadrupedal, it's a creature for sure, and I believe that it has an uncanny similarity to an Ahamkara. You can even make out the tentacles near its mouth on the left-hand side, and it shows that it might actually even have the iconic faceplates, albeit them splayed out. But there are so many questions this raises, and it's actually one of my major questions walking away from this trailer, which is, how did this get here? Was this as a result of us? Was it something the Witness found inside? Was it as a result of the Witness traveling in and changing the Traveler? Could the Witness have further weaponized these creatures? Normally, when the Witness and its disciples hold creatures in stasis, it's trying to transplant them with hive worms in order to gain their subjugation. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case with all of these creatures. And who knows what's really going on? Was there some reason why they ended up in the Pale Heart? Or were the Ahamkara in the Pale Heart from the start of it all? There are so many questions that this image raises, but I am fairly certain this is an Ahamkara based on the body structure alone.
Because the Traveler's where I am, isn't it?
So, I really quickly wanted to point this out. We get a good look at a subjugator here, but also 2 Hive tomb ships behind it, that it is seemingly not aggressive towards and is just chilling with. Maybe they're dropping reinforcements for it. Here's the thing. That will be relevant in a moment. We'll come back to it in a bit. The landscape here is pretty stunning because, well, there's lava, but I figured it was worth pointing out that these are Ahamkara tentacles. It begs further questions about whether that was because of what we have seen, or whether the Witness found some here, or whether the Witness has encountered the Ahamkara before. Regardless, it looks like this is one of the corrupted sections of the Traveler based on the, well, image of a person struggling within the lava. So, yeah, that raises even more questions. The symbol highlighted on the circle here is as old as Destiny 1's iconography can get, but to be honest, outside of it being drawn in cutscenes and then having the Traveler itself traced over it, I don't really know what it means. It might just simply be a representation of the Traveler. Who knows?
He knows it won't stop after it's consumed this place.
Ah, yes. So here's a funny story. I was completely unaware that this was going on. I was doing some other work, and then I decided to solo Flawless the dungeon, Warlord's Ruin, and, well, midway through my attempt, I looked over at Twitter and saw this frame, which a bunch of people in quick succession had tweeted at me because, well, I have kind of a thing about Kel'Garath being a little... Anyway, the question is this just a generic homie, or is this Kel'Garath? Either way, I'm gonna make sure their fate is still that they get picked up and placed headfirst in the nearest bin for recycling. Remember, dispose of your trash responsibly, kids.
You, me, the entirety of everything and everyone we know.
So, this is actually probably the most important series of frames in the entire trailer. Here we get a glimpse at Savathûn, Mithrax, and Keitel all in quick succession, implying that they're all going to be joining us inside the Pale Heart. In fact, if you look behind Savathûn, you can see some Annihilator totems being activated in the air, which we do also see earlier on in the trailer, which implies that the Lucent Hive are here. That's not nothing, and we'll talk about that for a little bit. But first, also do note that the Vanguard and Crow are also here in a frame that's displayed shortly after. So, there's a really simple question then. Do all of these characters make it into the Pale Heart, or are they apparitions conjured by our presence in the Traveler and our memory which may be shaping the Traveler? We know that Crow must be real because, I mean, he jumped through. We also know, probably from all the trailer footage we've seen, that Zavala and Ikora are real. However, Keitel, Mithrax, Savathûn, they're all open questions. I think Savathûn is the key here though, because if you look back into previous trailers, in particular the trailer that was showing off the gameplay from Final Shape that released a couple of weeks ago, you will actually see that in the early parts of the trailer, there are Hive running through one of the trip mines that's been altered by Prismatic that a hunter throws out. And those Hive? Yeah, they're Lucent Hive. So it's entirely possible that the Lucent Brood has infiltrated the Pale Heart. And that's really quite something. It's worth remembering too that it might make a reasonable degree of sense that Savathûn infiltrated here successfully. Remember the 15th wish, the entire reason we're able to get inside the Pale Heart? Well, Riven told us a whole bunch about that wish, but she may not have told us everything. And remember who originally made the 15th wish? Yeah. It was Savathûn. So, ultimately, there may have been other parameters that Riven transcribed into the wish and that Savathûn desired that would allow her to also enter the Pale Heart along with her brood. Even if this is not her directly, I believe that there is a further chance for Savathûn to have pressed her influence here thanks to the 15th wish. It's a really interesting set of possibilities, but I think it is also worth remembering that Savathûn might not be willing to enter the Pale Heart of the Traveler herself. This means that the Savathûn we're seeing here might actually just be one of her echoes, or one of the visions and vestiges that we get within Savathûn's throne world. So don't necessarily count this as being the real Savathûn. As for Mithrax and Keitel though, yeah, I would say that they're probably real. They don't have access to the same kind of paracausal powers that we do or that the Witch Queen does, so their presence implies that they are here for real. Which is neat. Having allies inside the Pale Heart is certainly going to be quite something. I would also remind you of the 2 tomb ships that I pointed out earlier. There is a question looming, which is that if this subjugator wasn't attacking these ships, does that mean that there are Hive within the Pale Heart who are not on Savathun's side? If that is the case, this is likely the brood of Xivu Arath, and if Xivu is here, in the Traveler, we are about to see one hell of a showdown. I don't necessarily know if that's the case. Xivu is still weak. But I don't think she would say no at the chance to strike. So I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Either way, the prospect of a showdown between the 2 siblings of the Osmium dynasty is quite something, especially if it leads us to blows to the point where we will be watching Savathun and Xivu Arath trade off verbally and try to convince each other of their own rightness. Xivu might come out as a surprising casualty of all this, or there might simply be a series of skirmishes, or we could see some kind of culmination where the 2 find common ground. That's all speculative though.
It wants to infect it all. We gotta stop what's happening here. Now. Before.
Needless to say, this is not the first time we've seen one of these, but this is the first really clear look we get at a veiled statue within the Pale Heart trailers that isn't just a momentary flash of footage. I can't confirm it, but I will say it's odd that this one is one of the only statues we've seen that isn't sliced and separated into parts. It's whole and complete. I don't know if anyone has seen any statues that have been sliced in any manner like this that are of that veiled statue variety, but if they have, maybe that puts some credence behind the idea that this is something that isn't that special. But I don't think I've seen anything quite like this. This is the one statue that consistently throughout pyramid architecture doesn't get meddled with. It's only meddled with in a single place, and that's the trailer where Asa talks about the precursors and the final shape. So, worth pointing out and worth thinking about at very least.
A final shape.
And in the last seconds of the trailer, we have that look at the witness, which shows us again some of the anger that it is capable of, and that despite its godlike power, it still has limits to its patience and can grow frustrated. Its composure can be marked. So, with all that said, that is the end of the trailer, but there are some big questions that arise for me having watched it. They are as follows. What is Savathun's goal inside the Traveler's Pale Heart if she is actually there, and if that is actually her brood, as opposed to some apparition formed from our mind? Secondly, how did an Ahamkara end up inside this glass casing? Something that was brought here by us? Something that was brought here by the witness? Something that was found within naturally? Something else? Don't know the answer to that either. And lastly, what is the meaning behind the veiled statues? Why are these ones left whole while all other masonry from the witness's creations appears to be segmented and sliced? I don't know the answers to any of these questions, but I think they're worth keeping in mind for the future as we venture into the Pale Heart. With all that said though, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and leave a like, and of course leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section, especially if you think you have answers to any of those questions that I posed. With all that being said though, know that your viewership as always is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime my name is Byf. Rodacia Arastra. I'll see you Starside.